Our message today is about Peter's call sign. The Lord called to the disciples from the beach. They didn't recognize him. How could they not recognize his voice when they listened to him for 3 years? I don't know. Let's look into this lesson today. Would you stand as I read from John 21, verses 1 to 12. John 21, 1 to 12. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. And in this way he showed himself. Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples were together. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." And they said to him, "We're going with you." They went out and immediately got into the boat, and that night they caught nothing. But when the morning has now come, Jesus stood on the shore. Yet the disciples did not know it was Jesus. Then Jesus said to them, "Children, have you any food?" They answered him, "No." And he said to them, "Cast your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast. And now they were not able to draw it in because of the multitude of fish. Therefore, that disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he had removed it, and plunged into the sea. But the other disciples came in the little boat, for they were not far from land, about 200 cubits. They came dragging the net with fish. As soon as they had come to land, they saw a fire of coals there, and fish laid on it, and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish which you have just caught." Simon Peter went up and dragged the net to land, full of large fish, 153, and although there were so many, the net was not broken. Jesus said to them, "Come and eat breakfast." Yet none of the disciples dared ask him, "Who are you?" knowing that it was the Lord. And this is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated. Breakfast with Jesus. Rachel, I saw you walk in. There you are. There's my Rachel. She texted me earlier yesterday morning. Said, "Dad, you want to come to the farmer's market for breakfast? They got sausage and biscuits, and I think there might have been eggs." And when she texted me, I was talking to another of our daughters on FaceTime. That's when you can look at your phone and you can see the person on the phone talking to her. So I missed breakfast with you. I was talking to Christina, as you know. So I love breakfast, farmer's market, Rachel, everything. So I missed it. The men just about missed Jesus. Jesus wanted some FaceTime with all 7 of them, but particularly one of the men, he wanted some FaceTime, some resurrected FaceTime. The message is entitled Peter's Call Sign because of the way Jesus called Peter, the way he communicated. If I use the words call sign today, you old CB operators will pull out your old handle and start going, "Breaker, breaker." I don't know what Bill's handle was, Charlotte. Was it breaker, breaker, small black car? This small black car here. Bob Land is a drummer boy. You were half pint? Okay, all right, it's half pint, calling black car. I mean, this is all Dukes of Hazzard. We had a lot of fun with it. Sammy, what was your handle? Did you have a CB? No? All right. If you did, what would be your handle? Or what would Norma's handle be? That's a safe comment. This is Gigi calling half pint, Gigi calling half pint. And that's how you communicate back then. You got on your right channel and you communicated. We've had call signs and call letters for a long time. Years ago, when there was just telegraph, they decided to have call letters for the origination station and for the destination station. So you tap in, let's say WAIN. WAIN are call letters for a radio station. WAIN calling WHLV. And you would type that in, and WHLV, that telegraph operator would realize this message is from my station. I better write this down. And so you listen to all the call letters, but when your call comes in, you have to write it down. And that's where this began, not only on land stations, but also on ships. If you're in the Navy ships had call letters, and it would be N, N whatever the 3 or 4 letters were, to identify who is sending the message and who is supposed to receive the message. Now today we have cell phones, and we have caller ID. You can know exactly who's calling you on your phone to choose if you want to take it or not. We have so much technology. Back in Jesus' day, there were no cell phones, no telegraphs, no call letters, but people still communicated. In this message, we want to learn how Jesus called upon one of his men with his call sign. His call sign. Simon's call sign was F-I-S-H. F-I-S-H. Jesus is calling. Fishing was Simon's life. Fishing was Simon's occupation. Fishing was Simon's expertise. And there they are, fishing all night, and they don't catch a thing. Do you think they felt good the next morning? Oh, Thomas, that was a good catch. Glad you got that 2-pound bass. That was beautiful. Oh, John, I'm sure glad you reached over and speared that 1-pound tilapia. We sure love that fish. They had nothing to boast about. Raise your hand if you ever fished. Raise your hand if you ever boasted. Of course you did. Look what I caught. Rachel caught a big fish, bigger than her husband caught. Sammy had it stuffed, and she has it forever to say, look, Nathan, I can fish. When fishermen don't catch anything, they're very discouraged. So you have to know a fisherman to know that when Jesus calls out to the men, children, have you any food? Meaning, have you any fish? The Amplified Bible says boys. Could you see some Adair County men hollering one from the shore, hey boys, you catch anything? Of course you can. Can you see the fellows in the boat, if they caught nothing, their response? No, we didn't catch anything. That's how the disciples were, like 7 boys, didn't catch a fish. Jesus purposely calls out to them, boys, did you catch anything? No. Boys, you didn't catch anything because you're on the wrong direction. Did you read in there where it says, Peter said, I'm going fishing? Was Peter a fisherman or an evangelist? Which one was he? He's going back to fishing. And worse, he takes men with him. James and John, Nathaniel, Thomas, and 2 others all go with him. They said, we'll go with you. This is, as I read the text, this is going backwards. You ever gone backwards in your Christian life? Yes. Jesus knows that. He's watching them. Sammy, I am certain he commanded the fish to stay away from the nets. Fish, nowhere near the disciples. I have a lesson for them. They didn't catch a thing. Jesus is getting them ready. He purposely creates a time of emptiness before he gives a time of fullness. We find this today in our own lives. A time of emptiness, a desolation, a darkness. Lord, nothing seems right. Nothing seems right. But the key word is seems. God will test our faith. James says that, first chapter. The Lord's brother said, actually, be joyful when your faith, is tested. Consider it pure joy, because the testing of your faith leads to perseverance and endurance. So an emptiness all night. So Peter Peter feels bad twice. He feels terrible for denying Jesus, and now he feels like he can't even be a fisherman, and that's his profession. He can't even do his job. Simon's having a hard day. Maybe that's why they couldn't recognize Jesus' voice. You know, if Callie was sick and had a bad ear infection and her mom cried out to her, she might not recognize it. I doubt it. I think she always would. But sometimes sick sheep don't recognize the shepherd's voice. Sick sheep will follow a false voice. Here are a few reasons why the disciples didn't recognize Jesus' voice. See if these relate to you. See if you can connect to these reasons why you might not recognize Jesus' voice. Number one, they were focused on themselves. They were focused on themselves. We're going fishing. We're going to do what we want. We caught no fish. We're not worth anything. They're focused on themselves. Number two, they were tired. They fished all night. Raise your hand if you have stayed up all night. I mean, last night. I mean, y'all look good for staying up all night, Norma. You look great. Last night. That's my bad. Last night. You did, Aretha. And you look great for staying up all night. Good for you. If you nod off, I will not call on you. Feel free just to relax and lay back. I won't say a word. Bobby might spear you. That's it. We're tired. When daylight comes, we're tired. Years ago, I've done some lock-ins with youth, and when the daylight comes, you're just crawling to go home and get in bed. Thirdly, they were discouraged. No fish, no success, no money. Fourthly, they were not looking for Jesus, and fifthly, they were not expecting Jesus. How many of us get like that? We get focused on ourselves, we get tired, we get discouraged, we're not looking for Jesus, and we're not expecting Him. We're just kind of turned in our own little world, thinking things are never going to change. It happens. And the only way out of it is faith. So no, wait a minute. God said to trust Him. He said He loves me. He says He has good plans for me. Wait a minute. Let me lift up my eyes and start to look and watch for what He's going to do. He knows I need fish, or He knows I need money. He knows I need healing. He knows I need love. Let me lift up my eyes and begin to look and watch for Him. And by doing that, you exercise your faith. You're showing God, I know you're working on it. I may not feel a thing. This morning, Norma and Nancy, as you all were up, at 4:30 I was awake, empty. And I've told you before, sometimes early Sunday morning, actually Aretha was awake, I just felt desolate. I said, Lord, this is heavy. You have got to work because I don't have it. And then gradually the day began to open up, as many Sundays do. And now, first service was strong, second service is strong. God is with us, loosing us, warming us. We came here looking for Him. We came here expecting Him. We may have come tired or discouraged, but we know He'll lift us up and love us. So let's look at this call sign. And I ask you for you to be looking for your call sign from God. What's your call sign? First, this catch of fish, 153 fish, was a sign. It's a sign to the disciples when they go from empty to full, failure to success, empty net to full net. You know the hair went up and down their spine when they lifted that net and it was full. You know they knew something was going on. Who is this that just called to us? Oh, John recognized him. The catch of fish was a sign. Signs are unusual or miraculous things that happen to verify a messenger or to verify a message. Here's the prophecy, and here's the sign that goes with it. Isaiah was the one who gave us the prophecy about Mary. And Mary conceived Jesus without knowing a man. That was a miraculous sign to guide us to His divinity. Jesus is man and God. The shepherds were given a sign, and when the shepherds found Jesus lying in a manger, the sign was to guide them to his nativity, to guide them to his earthly, physical birth. The Magi saw the star in the east. It was a sign to them to guide them to his royalty. When Jesus turned water into wine, that was a sign of the Messiah's reality. He is here. Those servants knew that man did a miracle. When Jesus healed the paralyzed man, that was a sign he could forgive sins. It was a sign of his authority. When Jesus calmed the storm, it was a sign of his capability. Who is this who can command the storm and command the wind? What is he capable of? Anything. When Jesus walked out of the tomb, it was a sign of his immortality, his divinity, his nativity, his royalty, his reality, his authority, his capability, his immortality. Wow, what a God we have. This is our Lord, resurrected and in our midst. We've just celebrated that greatest sign, the resurrection, the sign of the new covenant. Okay, secondly, this catch of fish was a call sign. And here's where we get into your call letters. A call sign. We all now call. We call to, we call out, we call up, we call in. We have call forwarding and call waiting. Caller ID. 2,000 years ago, this was a call sign. The disciples knew who sent it. It's that man on the shore. He did it. It's a call sign. He is the originator, and we are the receivers. Now, what is he wanting? What's the message? And this call sign, they had seen before. That's why Jesus repeated it. If we go back into Luke chapter 5, and Clint will have it on the screen for us, let's read about the first time Jesus used this call sign and what happened. When he stopped speaking, he said to Simon. See, Jesus had been in Simon's boat speaking to the people because they were crowding him by the shore. So he just stepped into the boat, put out a little bit, and he could talk to everybody. And the acoustics were great. His voice bounced off the water. Everybody could hear. But from that little ways out, he says to Simon, launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered and said to him, Master, we've toiled all night and caught nothing. Just like the John 21 account. Caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net. And when they had done this, they caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking. That net was breaking. Isn't it interesting? The net today was not breaking. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. They came and filled both the boats, and so that they began to sink. And Simon Peter, when Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knees, saying, Depart from me, for I am a sinful man, O Lord. For he and all who were with him were astonished by the catch of fish which they'd taken. That's Peter's character. He would be that genuine, that impulsive, that convicted to kneel down right in front of Jesus and say, I'm a sinner. Lord, I don't deserve this. What's happening? What's going on with this sign? What are you doing? The other disciples thought it was an astonishing catch of fish also. Down to verse 10, 10b, and Jesus said to Simon, do not be afraid. From now on you will catch men. Simon, from now on you will catch men. Verse 11, so when they had brought their boats to land, they forsook all and followed him. That's an important verse for us today. Because in Luke 5, Jesus called Peter to be a fisher of men. And the men, Peter, James, John, Andrew, left their nets. They forsook their nets and their boats and followed him. That's crucial. Because in John 21, when Peter says, I'm going fishing, Peter's going back to his boat. He's going back to his old life, to his old way. Jesus says, no fish there. There is no blessing there in that old life. That's not you. It's not who I've called you to be. It's not who I've planned for you to be. You don't get God's cooperation when you run the wrong direction. Did Jonah get God's cooperation when he went the wrong direction? No. He got trouble, storms, condemnation, thrown off the boat, whale. When he headed God's direction, he got blessing. The preaching went out with effectiveness, and Nineveh repented. So you and I always choose. Every day we can choose to go God's way or not go God's way. And we will reap what we sow. If we choose to go our own way and not God's way, nothing's going to work right. If we choose to go God's way, it'll work. It won't be easy, but it will work. The third point, we add another word to our call sign. The catch of fish was a personal call sign. Who did Jesus call in Luke 5? Simon Peter. Who is he calling back in John 21? Simon Peter. Next week, we'll take up the rest of the passage. On Communion Sunday, we'll talk about what happened as they had breakfast together. This week, we want to be tuned in to Jesus' call sign, for his call to us, for his voice to us. I hope we're not in our own world, selfish, tired, discouraged, not looking for Jesus, not expecting Jesus. You can't do anything like that. Even if we feel like that, lift up your head and look for him to work. Say, Lord, I don't feel like you're working at all, but I know you are, and I'm watching for your breakthrough. Now that's pure faith, and God honors that. He honors it. And as I move to give an invitation, I want us to come to a realization that Peter was not a man who held up well under pressure. Peter didn't hold up well under pressure. And who does? The first great catch of fish, Peter knows he's a sinner. He can't hide it. He just says, Lord, I'm a sinner. And Jesus says, I know. Don't be afraid of that. Follow me. Peter's the one who steps out of the boat to walk to Jesus, to walk on water. And he's walking on water toward Jesus. Then he looks at the waves. He feels the wind, takes his eyes off Jesus, and he begins to sink and sink and sink and says, Lord, save me. Peter doesn't do well under pressure. Jesus is arrested. They take him into the courtroom with Caiaphas. John goes into the courtroom. Peter's outside. The slave girl says, aren't you one of them? He says, no, I don't know him. No, I don't know him. Peter doesn't hold up well under pressure. We're not throwing a stone at him. We all need God's help under pressure. So Jesus is going to call Peter with a personal call sign to come and talk. If Jesus was going to call you this morning to breakfast, what would you all talk about? What would you talk about? What's he talking to you about right now in your heart? A person in your life, a need in your life, a joy in your life? What's he talking about? Karen, would you bring the music team up? We're going to sing He Touched Me. You know, that morning 2,000 years ago on the shore, Peter had 153 fish. I don't know what they sell for. But the fish weren't important. The money wasn't important. What was important is that Peter got to be with Jesus. And he got to be restored by Jesus, lifted up by Jesus. Peter was so excited to go to be with Jesus, the Bible says he plunged in. He jumped in. The others slowly brought the boats in, but Peter jumps in. If there is a need in your life or your family, or God's call sign is on you to come and pray, come and pray. Jump out of the pew and come down here. Now, I know y'all don't, me included, don't jump as high as we used to. That's okay. You can come slowly down and pray. Callie, you can jump out of the pew and bring Jacob too, if you ever need to. And your mom can still jump too. Bring her too. But the invitation is there anything that has you bound that needs to be loosed? Needs to be loosed. Something in your body, something in your mind, something in your heart, something in your relationship. It needs to be loosed. It needs God's help. It needs Jesus to speak to it. Let's ask him to touch us in the song, He Touched Me. And we won't be the same. The altar's open. Rick and Claudette and Betty, if you kind of come down front and sit here, and we'll pray with you if you want us to. And if you don't want us to, we won't. But if God is giving a call sign to someone, a personal call sign, and you will know what that is, I won't. You will know if he's calling you to come pray, then come pray. Jump out of that pew and come pray.